Right, here we go. Some of you can't be in the lessons because of different circumstances, COVID, etc. So this is what you'd be doing in your Paradise Lost lesson this week, looking at lines 229 to 409, sin and death. And I have to tell you that I say this a lot, but this really is one of my favourite sections of the poem. Okay, so let's start. So we've got an image here, and this is Satan, and it's from book 2, where we first meet sin and death. Satan has decided that he's going to leave hell and go to earth, try and find this paradise and mess it up. The problem is that, as you can see here, there is a big gate and he's got to get out of that gate. And the gate is guarded by, hang on, does my pointer work? Maybe not. Maybe I can't find a pointer at all. So this character here in the middle, she is sin. And as you can see, she is a beautiful woman on the top, but beneath she's got this serpent-like thing coiling around her and dogs. And this character on the left with the shield and the spear, that's her son, Death. And this is Satan obviously trying to make his way out. So sin has been given, ironically, the key to hell by God, and death is there to make sure that she doesn't open the gate. So I'm just going to take you to book 2, where we are first introduced to sin. So he leaves hell and at last appear, hell bounds high, reaching to the horrid roof, and thrice, threefold the gates, 3 folds were brass, 3 iron, 3 of adamantine rock, impenetrable, impaled with circling fire, yet unconsumed. So there are 9 gates in all, and there's this fire around everything. Before the gates, there sat on either side a formidable shape. The one seemed woman to the waist and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast. A serpent armed with mortal sting about her middle, round a cry of hellhounds never ceasing, barked with wide Siberian mouths full loud, and rung a hideous peal. So there's a big serpenty snake thing going on around her, and then there's these hellhounds, these dogs. Now, yet when they list, as in when they are quiet and listening, would creep, if aught disturbed their noise, into her womb and kennel there. Right, so that's not a very nice image of this woman, is it? Now, the rest of the description it goes on is pretty bad. The other shape, if shape it might be called, that shape had none, distinguishable in member, joint or limb. So this artist has taken a bit of license here, giving death a human form. Or substance might be called, that shadow seemed, for each seemed either. Black it stood as night, fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed his head, the likeliness. Oh, I've just realised my error. So actually, it's Lucifer on the left. And this shadowy, ethereal thing is death. Isn't that interesting? I've always read that wrong, if you like. I've always misinterpreted that there. Keeps cutting my majestic chin off. I think what's thrown me there is obviously that death looks older than the other 2 and still has this human shape. The likeliness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat, the monster moving onward came as fast with horrid strides. Hell trembled as he strode. The undaunted fiend, what this might be, admired, not feared. And that's important, thinking about Satan. So when he first sees this thing, he's just like, whoa, that is impressive. He's not scared at all. Other things then happen, a bit of kind of discussion and arguing until sin intercedes in the fight. And that's what we can see here about line 727. "O Father, what intends thy hand," she cried, "against thy only son?" She calls Satan Father and refers to death as her son. Okay. And Satan replies, "Why in this infernal vale first met thou callest me father, and that phantasm callest my son? I know thee not, nor ever saw till now sight more detestable than him and thee." That's a pretty big claim. He's been living in hell with all of these transformed creatures. So, to whom the portress of Hellgate replied, "Hast thou forgot me then? And do I seem now in thine eyes so foul, once deemed so fair in heaven?" And she goes on to describe how she was born. She says, "All on a sudden, miserable pain surprised thee, Satan." That moment where you get that sharp headache or a migraine comes on. "All on a sudden, miserable pain surprised thee. Dim thine eyes and dizzy swum in darkness, while thy head flames thick and fast threw forth, till on the left side opening wide, likest to thee in shape and countenance bright, then shining heavenly fair, a goddess armed, out of thy head I sprung." So he's like, oh, it's pain and flames are coming out. And then she springs out of his head, a fully formed, beautiful, armed goddess. Okay. Amazement seized all the host of heaven, because this happens while he's with the other angels and they're plotting the overthrow of God. "Back they recalled at first, and called me sin, and for a sign portentous held me." They're like, "Oh, this is bad luck." No kidding. "But familiar grown, I pleased, and with attractive graces won the most averse." So her beauty, first of all, they get used to seeing her, and then her beauty, just like Eve's beauty attracted Adam, basically calms everybody down. Now, the problem is that her attractive graces also win the attentions of Satan, her father. "Thee chiefly, who full oft thyself in me, thy perfect image viewing, becamest enamoured." She looks so much like him that he falls in love with her. "And such joy thou tookest with me in secret, that my womb conceived a growing burden." So awkward. So they have sex. Sex here is secretive, it's shameful, and it results in sin becoming pregnant. In the meantime, the war arose in heaven. Everyone's thrown down. And in the general fall, I also, she says, "I went, at which time this powerful key into my hand was given." I wonder why. It seems like, why would God give her the key? "With charge to keep these gates forever shut, which none can pass without my opening." Now, pensive here I sat alone, but long I sat not, till my womb, pregnant by thee, and now excessive groan, prodigious motion felt, and rueful throes. Remember, Eve's punishment is that she will have pains in childbirth. This has already been put in place for sin. Her pregnancy, her delivery is going to be a little bit worse. What happens? At last, this odious offspring, whom thou seest, thine own begotten, breaking violent way, tore through my entrails, that with fear and pain distorted. All my nether shape thus grew transformed. It's at this point then that she develops like the scales and the hideousness. Interesting that she's transformed by childbirth. But he, my inbred enemy, forth issued, brandishing his fatal dart, made to destroy. I fled and cried out, death! Hell trembled at the hideous name and sighed from all her caves, and back resounded death. I fled, but he pursued, though more it seems inflamed with lust than rage. Once again, sin is going to be the victim of her looks. And swift afar, me overtook his mother all dismayed, and in embraces forcible and foul, engendering with me. Of that rape begot these yelling monsters, that with ceaseless cry surround me, as thou sawest, hourly conceived and hourly born, with sorrow infinite to me. For when they list into the womb that bred them, they return, and howl and gnaw my bowels, their repast. Then bursting forth afresh with conscious terrors vex me round, that rest or intermission none I find. Who'd be sin? Who'd be sin? What a hideous life that she is forced to experience. She then goes on to say that death would eat me, except if I die, he will die. And then Satan kind of listens to all of this and says, hey, don't worry, because actually I've come to set you free. If you let me out, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to make sure we can get entrance into paradise, and then you two can come along. Brilliant. Now, he says to death, and you're always hungry. Well, do you know what? You can eat anything. You can have anything you want. Okay. All things shall be your prey. Hey, sounds like a good deal. Except she's been given the task to keep things, to keep the gates closed. The key of this infernal pit by due and by command of heaven's all-powerful King I keep. By him forbidden to unlock these adamantine gates. Against all force, death ready stands to interpose his dart. So, what do I do? What do I do? And she says, thou art my father, thou my author. Thou my being gavest me. Whom should I obey but thee whom follow? Thou wilt bring me soon to that new world of light and bliss, among the gods who live at ease, where I shall reign at thy right hand voluptuous, as beseems thy daughter and thy darling. So eventually she makes a decision. There's no question here that of like, her mistreatment at the hands of Satan or death. She's just like, you're my father and my author, and you're offering me something good. Now, obviously, all of this is from book 2, right? I'm giving you this information as context because we meet sin kind of cold. You need to know where she's from. And sin is going to be very interesting when we look further ahead into Doll's House and we look at Nora. Oh, I wanted to call Ada then for some unknown reason. She opens the gates, but she can't close them. So let's move on. It's why I do encourage you to read all of Paradise Lost. A bit ambitious, maybe. Okay. So, we've got this ominous setting that introduces the characters of Sin and Death, these gatekeepers. Sin is presented as hero worshipping her father, and her growing strength is presented as sinister and supernatural. A close relationship with death is something powerful and inevitable, and her strong attraction to the earth and her plan to build a highway between heaven and hell is made to seem threatening. So those are the areas that we might want to start considering as we look further at sin and death. Okay. Now, I'm sure we've all heard of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. What Milton gives us here is the unholy Trinity. Sin and death are both Satan's offspring dear. Sin's got no mother, but is born out of Satan in the same way that Son of God has no mother, but is Son of God. Oh, spooky. That's better. Give me a chance to stretch. So she's also got no control over her constant changing body and held captive by cruel pregnancy. So she's actually, it is her womanhood, her femaleness that keeps her captive. Again, we might want to think about that later on. Death is this shadow-like character. He's not a major character, but he's going to have a significant impact. He's not as sad as Sin because he is empowered. He does have some control, and he takes pleasure in human pain and suffering. Okay, so when we meet them in book 10, from about line 235, you see why I like these characters, though. I don't suppose you imagined when we said we were doing this book that you'd meet characters like this. Oh, son, why sit we here each other viewing idly, while Satan, our great author, there's that word again, thrives in other worlds, and happier seat provides for us his offspring dear. It cannot be but that success attends him. So, having opened the gate and followed him, they're now sitting around waiting for his return. And the fact that he's taken so long suggests to Sin that he's been successful. If mishap, ere this he had returned, with fury driven by his avengers, since no place like this can fit his punishment or their revenge, he'd have been driven out by now. So why are we just sitting here, twiddling our thumbs, doing nothing? So here we see a character taking control of her own situation, being active, not passive. Okay. And then she says, methinks I feel new strength within me rise, wings growing, and dominion given me large beyond this deep. Whatever draws me on, or sympathy, or some connatural force, powerful at greatest distance to unite, with secret amity, things of like kind, by secretest conveyance. And she's not sure what's causing this, but she feels really powerful. I mean, and it could be that she's feeling the success of what Satan's done. Thou, my shade, inseparable, must with me along. For death from sin, no power can separate. So whatever we're doing, you've got to come with me. So what do they decide to do? So they discuss the idea that perhaps the reason, I'm just finding it in my book, the reason that he's not come back is because this gulf that exists between this kind of area of chaos and earth it's difficult to get back over. So she says, why don't we found a path over this main from hell to that new world where Satan now prevails, a monument of merit high to all the infernal host. So, whom thus the meagre shadow answered soon. And he says to her, go whither fate and inclination strong leads thee. I shall not log behind, nor err the way thou leading. He's agreeing. You go ahead, mum, and I'll follow. And he says, such a scent I draw of carnage, prey innumerable, and taste the savour of death from all things there that live. So he's excited. He can already smell the coming death and destruction. Nor shall I to the work thou enterprisest be wanting, but afford thee equal aid. I will work as hard as you. But what is it that they're going to do? It's bloody great, this poem, isn't it? So saying, with delight, he snuffed the smell of mortal change on earth, as when a flock of ravenous fowl, though many a league remote, against the day of battle, to a field where armies lay encamped, come flying, lured with scent of living carcasses designed for death, the following day in bloody fight. So, like, carrion, crows, ravens, whatever, can smell the blood of a battle. That's what he can smell. So scented the grim feature and upturned his nostril wide into the murky air, sagacious of his quarry from so far. So, going to jump across a little bit, because that section is basically, I love it. I love all that section, but it's them basically describing how they build the bridge. And as interesting as it is, it's hard to make it talk directly to a doll's house. But they build this bridge, and then more or less as soon as they finished it, when behold, Satan in likeness of an angel bright betwixt the centaur and the scorpion steering his zenith, while the sun in Aries rose. Disguised he came, but those his children dear, their parent soon discerned, though in disguise. He can't hide himself from his kids. So, what's happened to Satan then? A little bit of backstory. He, after Eve seduced, unminded, so no one's taking any notice of him now, slunk into the wood, and changing shape to observe the sequel, saw his guileful act by Eve, though all unweeting, seconded upon her husband. Oh, I'm just going to look up unweeting again. Oh, and it hasn't taken me straight to it, which is desperately annoying. Right, we'll check that at the end. Sorry. I think it means like without blame. What line is it? 335. Doesn't have it in here. Seconded upon her husband, saw their shame that sought vain covers, but when he saw descend the Son of God to judge them, terrified he fled. Not hoping to escape, but shun the present. So he knows he can't get away with it forever, but he doesn't want it to happen right now. Fearing guilty what his wrath might suddenly inflict. That past, returned by night, and listening where the hapless pair sat in their sad discourse and various plained, thence gathered his own doom. So he goes off and then he comes back and he's listened to Adam and Eve talking about the punishments that they've been given, and that's how he learns what's going to happen to him. Okay. Where am I? 355. Right. So, great joy was at their meeting, and at sight of that stupendous bridge, his joy increased. Long he admiring stood till sin speaks. O parent, these are thy magnificent deeds, thy trophies, which thou viewest as not thine own. So now she hands over, what's the word I'm looking for? Credit to him. She says, thou art their author and prime architect. For I no sooner in my heart divined, my heart, which by a secret harmony still moves with thine, joined in connection sweet, that thou on earth hadst prospered, which thy looks now also evidence. But straight I felt, though distant from thee worlds between, yet felt that I must after thee with this thy son. So she's saying this is all down to you, this bridge and all of our actions, because we are so simpatico. Such fatal consequence unites us three. Hell could no longer hold us in her bounds, nor this unvoyageable gulf obscure detain from following thy illustrious track. Nothing's going to stop them from being together. Whom thus the Prince of Darkness answered glad, fair daughter, and thou, son and grandchild both, high proof you now have given to be the race of Satan. For I glory in the name, antagonist of heaven's almighty King. Amply have merited of me, of all the infernal empire, that so near heaven's door, triumphal with triumphal act have met, mine with this glorious work, and made one realm hell and this world one realm, one continent of easy thoroughfare. Now, all of these monsters and demons, they can just get into paradise. Dead easy. She's built them a bridge. But really, it's all down to Satan. Down to paradise descend, there dwell and reign in bliss. Thence on the earth, dominion exercise. So he says, off you go down now to paradise. And in the air, chiefly on man, sole Lord of all declared, him first make sure your thrall, and lastly kill. And he's saying this to death in particular. He's saying, you can have whatever you want down there, but don't kill Son of Man first. You've got to have him in your thrall, which means to have him kind of captive. Make him sinful. Okay. Oof. Right, we're not going to do the comparison sheet. We're going to do that when we've come back. So let's just do this so I can reassure people who are off what they're doing. So I hope you found that useful. Let's go to our Gale for week 2. I'm just wondering why I didn't link that to the end. Maybe I don't want you to do that now, actually. I'm going to change that. That's going to be a week 3 activity. So I'm going to change that current activity and give you some work to do on sin and death. You are going to prep your work for next week, reading ahead. I'm going to be given a coursework task, and you've got your second Masolit lecture to watch on Adam and Eve and their fall. And then next week, your lecture is on Satan, and then there's a Satan vocabulary activity. I've confused myself a little bit there. Let's edit that before I forget. Okay. Right. I hope that's enough to get you going. That's half an hour's worth of work. Email me if you need any more help or support. and hopefully you will all be back in the classroom with me soon.